So, North has betrayed us once more. Is that the intro I should go with?
A betrayal might be a strong turn of phrase. It's probably just some shakeups, some mix-ups with the warp. Unpredictable events can arise. I understand.
We do. We still love him, but the urge to hang shade on him is strong. Because that's what friends do.
It becomes ever easier. Yeah.
So, viewers, we are... I don't know if we call this Grimdark Therapy, or like 2/3 of Grimdark Therapy. But anyway, Cypher from What the 40K is joining me once more.
Hello.
Today's episode, we're going to be doing a bit of a tier list. And because we like to talk about the little nigglies we have in the hobby, typically in these free-flowing episodes, I thought it'd be a fun idea. And I've been sitting on this one for a while. For a hot minute, I've been sitting on this one. And I wanted to do a tier list. And the tier list is on 40k characters that Games Workshop has made a big deal, sunk a lot of resources into, and then just sort of gone, all right, dusted their hands of it. You've done your job, and then just they've forgotten them to space and time and to the story and the universe. So I've picked 21 characters here. There are sometimes a couple from the same faction, and not every faction is represented. I do apologize for that. But I like to think that my choices make sense, because I've tried to pick characters who are instruments of potentially great change in the universe, or within like the stories of their factions, what they're supposed to represent. So I think the best example of a character who is like a major change, and the first one we'll start with, to rank. By the way, I should explain how the rankings work, shouldn't I, Cypher?
It's very important. A very technical ranking system.
Yeah, so we have very top of this chart is the deep impact. So the deep impact is like they actually mean something to have these characters back. Like the universe is profoundly changed because they're back, and it's constantly changing because they're back. And every beat that heads forward, every new codex that's released, has no choice but to refer back to this character because they are so instrumental to the changes that are going on. The okay is like, yep, they're having an impact on the setting, but it's not quite to the same degree, but there's no like egregious misuse or wastage of the character. Then the third one down is just moderate. It's just like, they're back, whatever. Then we have characters who are just failed by the introduction, where it's like, no, you should have brought more to the table than this. At least you're doing something, but you should have brought more. And then, of course, epic failure speaks for itself. So, yeah. First off the cab is going to be Guilliman. So, Roboute Guilliman. Where do we put him in this list for his impact on 40k as it currently stands? Both him personally, like, in the lore, and as well as what he means to the game system. I'm thinking he's probably the closest thing to the deep impact as we can get with any of these.
If you didn't say it, I would have thrown that out there as well. Yeah, I mean, Guilliman, as you said, he is referred back to. He came out and has had probably, I suspect, one of the deeper impacts of the selection of characters we have here, right? He came back. He planned Primaris all along since the old days, right? Roll your eyes, whatever, but that's what it is. And he's put that into motion. The Crusade's gone out. He's reuniting Imperium, not Nihilus. What is it? What is the regular Imperium called? The good
is it
the
Primus?
Primus? I feel like it's Primus. Oh, this is embarrassing. Look. I'm low on sleep. Please forgive. Anyways, and he did the whole thing with Mortarion, right? The Plague Wars, right?
Yes.
So things have happened, and he's still kind of relevant. He was in the cinematic for 10th edition. That's something.
Yeah, that's something. So yeah, obviously big new model, headliner for the game system, the Primaris Marine stuff, the fact that he is leading the Imperium. Yeah, I think
Huge impact.
Yeah, huge impact.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's been all in those Dawn of Fire books. I mean, most of them are forgettable. There's like one or two that I quite like. One that I think is very good. But the point is, he's there. He's doing something with his presence, with his he's not just hanging around in idle animation over there, right?
Speaking of, Marnius Augustus Calgar, the number one Marine for decades, the Marine, the one who all other Marines looked up to as the pinnacle of what a chapter master should be.
Dude, this is a guy who destroyed an Avatar of Cain, the Swarm Lord.
Yeah, he did feats that only Primarchs have accomplished. Up until him, it was just Fulgrim that had killed an Avatar of Cain. Now my second cousin Vinny has killed one, but back then it was quite an accomplishment. And he got Primarisified, obviously. He was leading the force of the Ultramarines through the toughest of times for the rebirth of Guilliman. Anyway, what does he do now?
He's in a pretty tricky spot, like many, and this is something you mentioned when we were discussing before recording. Like a lot of the Legion champions, or even, it's particularly apparent with the Legion champions. Your Karn the Betrayers, your Aramins, they kind of get overshadowed by their Primarch, because that's effectively the role they used to have, right? They were the faction commander, right?
Faction commander, and all the sins of the father were inherited by the son. Right. Now the father has returned, and he's better than you in every single way.
Yeah.
So
they make him work on the tabletop, and you give all these. If you give each thing a different ability, then they're gonna all have a use. You can make some argument for their use. But from a lore impact on the story point of view, it's like, man, he's just babysitting Ultramar, really. Right?
I think right in the middle, just a completely moderate impact on the setting. Because he is an important character. He's just completely discarded and just not used, because any story beat you would use him for, you just use Guilliman for these days, right?
Yeah, I think there's probably narrative space for like an Ultramarines novel, if they really wanted to, that could feel like, if it's focused on the Ultramar segmentum. But you know what? That happened in Plague War, and Guilliman turned his ship around and came back, right? Literally. Yep. So maybe you can't escape it.
Should I go another Imperial one next, or a different faction altogether?
I mean, we can mix it up with Chaos. I mean, these aren't set in stone, right? We can shift them around as the budget balances itself, so to speak, right?
I gave a preview of different units to you beforehand. I didn't go through each one exhaustively, but you can tell what they are from the pictures, just to try and define. I'm looking at the preview.
Yeah,
you can call it. You pick the next one.
How about Mortarion? Yeah, because he's like. He probably had a similar, maybe not to the same extent, but he came back at the start of 8th and had a lot of like lore presence. He came back and had a trilogy of novels that he kind of, served as the main antagonist for with Guilliman, right? Or
out of the Chaos,
the Dark Imperium series. It's a whole trilogy of novels. So that, compared to his other brothers, it does feel like he's had a better impact on a better showing, let's say.
100%. Out of all the Chaos characters, especially the Demon Primarchs, he's the only one who seems to have any substance, and he's not a complete and total miserable failure. His lasting impact, well, I think as soon as the Plague War stuff was done, so was he, for story purposes. Yeah, so
he was put to jail, basically.
I think I'm tempted to put him in the okay tier. He served a purpose, but he was not completely miserably let down.
Yeah, I think that's a good kind of niche for the okay rank to occupy, because it's like the character came out, it felt relevant at the time. Sure, it's not like concurrent and presently a looming threat or like a significant driver in the universe, but he came out and didn't whiff.
Yeah, it was not a swing and a miss.
That sits well with me. I think that's a good spot for him.
Yep. All right, I'm going to pick the next one. Let's make it Ursula Creed. So there was two choices that there could have been here for the Astra Militarum. Basically it was between Lord Solar and Ursula, and I thought Ursula, because of the name conventions tying to Creed. Creed has always been sort of, Lord Solar Macarius was overshadowed and replaced by Ursula Creed. So Ursula Creed replacing the old Creed, I think, is just sort of, it's the one people immediately going to think of, right? Out of the characters. And she's the embodiment of, for some reason, Cadia still lives.
Oh, Cadia still lives, not just in your hearts. It lives in
copyright documents lodged in, lodged in Nottingham 2019.
Look, I quite like Ursula Creed as like a concept of a character. I like this idea that the human characters, if you're going to do a time skip, maybe that is kind of narratively interesting if they have success, like generational successors, right? That keeps them unique compared to like Space Marine characters. Your Marnius Calgar's an immortal kind of, transhuman, right? So I kind of like that novelty where there's this generational shift, passing of the torch to the next generation, right?
If they do something interesting with them, though, and
yes,
what have they done with her?
Look,
and sorry, just to elaborate further, I find it interesting that they had to make it a she, and there is nothing about her that has anything to do with her being a female. Like, the character is very androgynous. It could have been, apart from the name and some peculiarities of the sculpt, you wouldn't ever know it was a woman. I kind of like that, though. I like the fact that her being a woman is not really a talking point, because it's like, that's the way it should be, right? If you're a soldier in this universe, your gender should really not mean a lot. So I do like that fact, but also at the same time, it's like, well, then why do it in the first place? Just to show women guardsmen? I don't know. It's just a weird choice.
I think you want well, I think GW definitely does. Well, they did it. They made her a female, so obviously they want a sort of diverse cast of epic named characters, right? Of these named heroes, epic heroes. But I don't, again, I don't hate it. If it's gonna, flip a coin, if you're gonna have a generational shift and the next Creed in the lineage is taking the mantle, I mean, I'm indifferent, honestly. Right? I think
I just want to put it like with Calgar in just the total.
Yeah,
Writing some good novels with her, and I might change my opinion.
Yeah, I want to say there probably is one, and this is like, so it's hard to keep up with all the Black Library novels. I mean, just in terms of releases, it's hard to recall them in the moment. I'm pretty sure she did debut with something, or at least since then. So yeah, you can put her in the same tier as Calgar. I think that's reasonable.
All right, you got the next pick of character.
Who is next? Okay, well, let's talk about the Incarn, okay? Because I find the Incarn to be such a compelling concept. Like, that's to me that's like as big of a deal as Primaris, maybe even bigger, right? This idea that you've taken, look, this is an idea or a concept you've laid out pretty clearly in I think even in our last episode, you were making this case like, yeah, look, the Imperium is all about this dying empire, right? Well, like the Eldar are just like the embers of what's left. They are like degrees beyond even the Imperium's level of stagnation, right?
Yeah, they're
So
the
for
last
the
wisp.
Eldar,
They're the last wisp of smoke coming off the candle.
yeah, right. So, like for the Eldar to birth a new god, to kind of like, oh my god, are they gonna try and resurrect their pantheon in a kind for a new era? That way bigger deal than Primaris, like, oh, secret legions of Marines in your space garage, right? Like that's a big deal, obviously, for Marines, like all the chapters and a new founding. Yeah, big deal. But look, birthing a new deity, that's crazy, right? And especially for the Eldar, right? Super compelling stuff. And honestly, the probably for me, and maybe it might be just personal bias here, but it might be the most disappointing. I don't know how the Incarn sits with you, but like every lore kind of story that's come out since then has been just the Ynnari getting screwed, and I just think GW doesn't know what to do with it. I think they had a super convoluted plan for the Triumvirate, resurrecting Guilliman and all that stuff, and then after they had this kind of sandbox full of these characters, I just think they didn't know what to do with them. And I think there's such rich narrative opportunity to explore there. But I don't think GW really wants to move the needle too much with regards to advancing the plot like they did going from 7th edition to 8th edition. It really seems to me like they just kind of want to say, this is the status quo, the galaxy split in two, and Primarchs are coming back. And because of that, I think they don't know what to do with the Incarn, so now it's like...
So where would you put it on the board?
With reservation to... I'd put it on... I put on fail, maybe epic failure.
I think it's a strong epic fail. Yeah, I think it's a strong epic fail. Because that should be a huge deal for that faction. That's galaxy altering for not just the Eldar, but also the Dark Eldar, the Corsairs, and not Chrome World. What is it? The other Exodites, yeah, and of course even Harlequins. Like Harlequins obviously protected by the Laughing God, yada yada. I get it, but like for all Eldar, that's a big deal. That's the equivalent of like the Emperor like lifting a finger on the Golden Throne. You know, it is the equivalent of what Guilliman's revival was. You know, or him healing in stasis at least. It's like it's the glimmer of hope, and it's just completely. But they've done nothing with it. It's just back to the status quo for Eldar and Dark Eldar.
Nothing satisfying with like what could be like a super compelling character, or I guess narrative thread you could call it. You know, they're just getting dummied at every turn. They can't even get a W, like a a softball W in their narrative codex entries, right?
And they're doing nothing interesting with the faction either. No other characters, units, you know, just...
That's true. Well, yeah, I mean, I understand in part, right? Like, I understand the constraint, like you have these old resin things in Dark Eldar, in Craft World Eldar, and you want to recreate those first before adding new Ynnari stuff. And Ynnari's kind of always been like a soup faction, effectively, just rooted in these named characters. It's awkward. It's kind of awkward.
Very awkward.
Conceptually, anyways, like from a game mechanics point of view, but yeah, I still think epic failure for lore impact, because it had the most to gain, right? It could have been so intriguing to me. Like, I love that idea of, oh man, they're bringing back the... Yeah,
I think I have like one other on this list, maybe two, that are like could be worse off. Speaking of characters, Farsight. So Farsight is on my list because of the Farsight enclaves. That should be quite a big in-universe deal. At least within the realms of that faction. And yet nothing interesting has happened with the Tau beyond, well, they're in a constant expanding sphere of influence. And it's like, someone who's sort of woken up to the perils of the 40k universe and is leading a breakaway faction, seems like that should be a big deal for them.
Yeah, well, correct me if I'm wrong. Again, it's hard to keep every element of the lore in mind, but I mean, Farsight and his enclaves, are they not... I don't want to say against the Tau Empire. I mean, they're allied for it. They fight for the Tau, but they don't like the way the typical Tau and the ethereal class does business, correct?
I would say it's like America and England. It's like they are friends, but if one's interests go against the other to any great degree, they will, like, behind closed doors, stab them in the back.
Yeah, okay, so then that positions them as, like, interesting facets. They're a contrasting facet for the Tau side of the Tau perspective, right?
Well, it's, you have Tau who are all about, like, combining and growth and absorbing, and which is what the Imperium wants, right? The Imperium wants to absorb the galaxy and all of humanity, and is breaking apart despite this, trying to hold itself together as best it can. And here's Farsight deliberately breaking apart his faction and going against the grain. It feels like just, what are they doing with it?
Well, no, aside from squandering it, like that's the answer, I think. It's not particularly interesting. Again, it's a concept that's compelling because the Tau are the fledgling upstart, the rising empire, right?
Yeah.
Like that, you have the cycle, right? They're on the upswing. And for someone from that faction to be kind of woke, so to say, right? To like the galaxy as it truly is, right? And to their own, culture's follies. That is compelling, for sure, right? It's tough, though. Like, I get it. I don't want to judge it too harshly. It's hard for most factions to get narrative, to get novel support, but maybe
even within the codexes, though, I don't think there's a lot there. Say.
Yeah, you can't make that argument when it comes to at least codex lore upkeeps and the campaign books as
well. I mean, they even had the Farsight Enclaves had their own codex back in 7th edition 40k. So they've progressed backwards. Right. So I'm going to put it at the top of fail. Like, it's just going from moderate down into fail, only because it is so crucial to that particular faction. Do you have any strong misgivings about that placement?
I know I'll defer to that. I mean, I hesitate to call it a fail, only because I'm just not confident in like what has happened. Like, look,
the fact that you can't record, I think, tells enough of a story there, though.
That might be the case. Like, he was in the Arkham, but it felt to me very phoned in. It's like you have this this very like Imperium and Chaos-centric campaign with like Angron and the Lion and Vashtorr, right? And then Farsight's in a book.
Yeah, here's Farsight with the chair.
Yeah.
Okay, your pick.
Let's go with the much beloved Belisarius Cawl.
Okay.
Not a controversial character at all. Everyone loves everything he's done. 100%.
Who exists entirely for the plot to move forward.
Yeah, despite how people might feel about him, I think he has deep impact. Like, he's pretty good, Like, I put him lower than Guilliman, but I think he has deep impact. Like, he's literally the vehicle the writers use to facilitate change.
Primaris Marines, any kit that the Marines need, it's him. It's him.
All of it, right?
Yep. Primaris Marines, the Primarisification of old characters as well.
Yeah, like new vehicles,
comes back to even the revival of Guilliman comes back to him.
That's huge. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? He has had some pretty kind of like interesting books on his own with like the Pharos and it wasn't. I think it was on that same planet.
Well,
He's had some novels, is my point.
He's
just,
even
like,
popped up in Horus Heresy novels.
Oh yeah, towards the end, yeah, that
Wolfsbane
one.
Wolfsbane, yeah. Not much to say though, beyond like he's a plot device that exists in the universe and achieves the goal admirably.
Yeah, I think I didn't. From what I can recall, I didn't dislike that book where it's just him and his buddy, his special Primaris Alpha Primus guy. Yeah. I think he's an interesting character, but yeah, he had to. It's maybe shoehorned a lot of lore changes in a rather untasteful way.
Yep.
Unfortunately for him.
All right.
You know.
I don't think there's much more to say, so I'm gonna move us to I'm gonna go Be'lakor next. If ever something landed with the sound of a wet fart, he is in 40k because they had the model laying around, I think is
yeah, very much so. I kind of hate Be'lakor for like personal bias reasons. Like I just hate how from a rules point of view, I know it's not a rules conversation, but I can't help but the bias trickles over. I can't help but like this idea where he's like the auto include of all auto includes. So he's like he makes all your armies better. You have to include them. Like I despise that rules writing sensibility, and so
it's awful.
It's hard for me to like Be'lakor at all. Yeah, I don't know if.
I don't think
like,
there is much.
Go ahead.
Well, I don't think there is much scope for him to have much impact on the setting because it's not his setting.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, unlike the Incarn, where potential is so great and the score is so low, it's like Be'lakor has a low score in terms of impact, but it's also like, what's the bar, the expectation for Be'lakor? It's pretty like ankle high. Like I don't think anyone had major expectations for Be'lakor to like shatter the galaxy in our understanding of how everything right with his introduction.
Yeah, I think it was set at ankle height and he tripped over it. I'm going to put him at the bottom of fail. It's not an epic failure because again, it's not his setting, but he's misused. And I don't think he belongs in the middle because it's not moderate. It's just misuse.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So your call next. Who's next on the chopping block?
Let's do a character I kind of like. Let's do Fabius Bile.
Ooh, you're hurting me here. You're hurting me.
Oh no, we have a conflict of interest.
No, I love the character.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that part's easy.
Look, I think, and this might just be my bias in the opposite direction. I think Fabius Bile is okay. He's had novels since he's come out, right? And he's like a cool older dude from the Horus Heresy. Like I'm a sucker for these old characters, you know, like I despise like rosters of games where like every character is like just the coolest 10 out of 10 max #cool sunglasses emoji levels of like, you know, awesome. And I kind of like that he's just like this old guy, you know, superficial, but it's definitely going to like influence my perception of him. But yeah, I don't think he's had a bad showing. I mean, he's had novels.
See, I'm going to hard disagree.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I'm going to hard disagree. Because he's had novels. The problem is, if there's one character who should have had a real impact on the Imperium, it should have been Fabius. Like, he should have created Chaos Marines that was so dangerous. The Imperium had no choice but to create Primaris Marines in response. Instead, he's, even with like all of the, like, it just makes no sense. Like, with all the knowledge that he gleaned from Fulgrim, from coining other Primarchs, from using, like, you know, being able to make unreal abominations of flesh that could never survive in the real universe because he, like, dwells in the warp. from working with Dark Mechanicum, from getting hidden knowledge from demons, from dealing with Dark Eldar homunculi. All of this is actually translated to nothing like actually appreciable on the setting.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. You've convinced me. Yeah, because he's certainly positioned that, right? Like, you know, in the lore and in tabletop rules, that's how they position it. But none of that is felt, right? It's like, you know, none of the like you never like there might be isn't his little familiar guy collecting genes, right?
Yeah.
But that's never felt, right? That narrative thread is he's never cracked the code, right?
Yeah.
And it's because I guess GW doesn't really want him to. They just kind of want to have their cake and say he's a super brilliant scientist mastermind, but he doesn't really.
You think there is nothing but
tabletop.
He has more tools at his disposal than Cawl does to achieve his end, and yet has failed to achieve his end. And
oh yeah,
it's kind of like, to me, him having novels, it's like a Uriel Ventress. It's like, yeah, he's got novels, it exists, like the company knows he exists and they write stories around him, they just don't do anything with him. It's like a Uriel Ventress story. It's like he may have all these novels, but you're never going to say that he has an impact on the setting like Marnius Calgar does. So for that reason, I really want to put him in the epic failure, but right at the top of epic failure, where it's like at least he's getting stories. It's just his use to the actual setting.
Yeah, but
it's just not criminally underused.
That's fair. You've convinced me. Yeah, because he should.
He's $50
have
help to ease that.
No, I'm with you. Next here?
I'm going to pick Ghazghkull. So, big new model fighting Ragnar Blackmane when he was brought out. He's in this gigantic, ungodly gigantic body now. He's not just bigger than his old body. He is bigger than... Like, he's halfway between a Dreadnought and a Knight in size now. He had quite the glow up. His old body was about the size of a Terminator.
It's a 40 millimeter
40 mil base, yeah. So
quite the glow up.
He's finally united the Orcs for some sort of war. So what happened?
Literally nothing. It's like background status quo defining, like this, and I think we'll see this with like a certain Necron's character as well. It's like this character is introduced to define the status quo of how serious the faction has become, but the narrative doesn't really explore that at all. He debuted in a campaign book, an awful campaign story with Ragnar Blackmane. But that's basically how he was used. Like, look how big and bad he is, and
someone for Ragnar to fight. Do you think?
No. I think I hate this. I hate that whole story thread. You don't take a big bad of a faction and have them get defeated by a captain of a Space Marine. You need to. It's so rude. It's so rude to Orc fans. Like, it's so dumb. Why would they do that? It's so tone deaf to like sensibilities of fans and what they root for, and they want to see their guy get a win. At least have him, if he's gonna have to lose, have him get beat by Guilliman or something. I feel like it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But in any ways, for let me look at the rankings here. I guess he's like, what's the one below OK? What does that say?
Completely moderate, just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I think that's where I would put him. Like, I don't know what your sensibilities are for Ghazghkull. Like,
I think there, but right down the bottom. It's like they haven't ruined the character, but geez, they've done nothing with him. But at least there's scope to do something with him.
Yeah, he represents he's unified the Orcs. We just don't do anything because it's like
right to the edge, like almost falling off my screen is where I'm going to put him. Like, he's that close to failing.
Fair. Yeah, he's like one of these characters where I don't know. Like they introduce characters returning. I can't have think about this, but I feel like when you have this this space where characters are returning, it makes it feel like advancing and moving forward. But then it feels like GW doesn't really want that most of the time, right? They want to keep, oh, Ghazghkull has a new model, and this is what he's doing, and this is what he's doing for the setting, and this is where we are. But then Fulgrim will come out, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll talk about him like he hasn't been here the whole time, right? Like that's what's weird to me. Like, okay, so like I'm sensing you're vibing with that take. It's like,
yes.
Yeah, so it's not just me and feeling like it's a mental trap or something. It's just, yeah, so I think Gaz is a victim of that, basically, right? It's,
yeah,
so I would say he's just okay.
A galaxy ending war that can't leave like Ground Zero is kind of sad.
Yeah.
All right, who's your next pick?
Let's see here. Maybe have we spoken about Morvenn Vahl yet?
Oh, the Sisters of Battle.
Yeah, the one in the suit, the one in the Paragon suit. She has a spear.
Yeah,
she has a spear. So like, again, talking about like, I can't help it but shout out the characters I like and the characters I bias for and against. She's one I don't particularly enjoy. I don't like Paragon war suits, and I don't like the big mama in Paragon war suit. I think it's getting away from what the Sisters of Battle are, which is witch hunters in that kind of classic 40k gothic sort of way, sci-fi gothic, right?
Remember they used to have like the classic witch huntery hat, you know, like that tall, wide hat.
What Greyfax and that other Inquisitor have them, right? It's nice. It's charming in its way, right? But in any case, the top lady of the Battle Sisters is in a mech suit, which it's so hard for me to get to like it. It's just I don't think I can. As for deep impact in I'm sure there's some novel representation and codex lore as you get, but it's a High Lord of Terra, super big important character that maybe you can make an argument shouldn't even be on the front lines if you're that important. Or maybe you could be. Like Trajann's also a High Lord, but I feel like a Custodi has literal plot armor. But maybe the sisters have that too because they're so zealous with their worship and their miracles and all that.
Yeah, but I feel like the superhuman can heal almost any wound is probably a more sufficient kind of plot armor to have on the front line.
Yeah, because they have the
makes more sense.
Blessings and superior alchemy, genetic alchemy or whatever.
So where did we put her? I think it's like almost an Ursula Creed situation.
Yeah, where's Ursula again?
Right in the middle.
Okay. Yeah, I guess she can be moderate. Like, I don't think it's offensive what's happened with her, but I try to put my bias aside. Yeah, I guess moderate. Fine.
Yeah, I think.
Like, what have you brought to the table? I guess now we know who another seat at the High Lord's table is. That's what we know.
Yep, for all that means.
It's just like a flex, right? It's just something cool you can say about her.
Yeah.
Really, that's what I feel like. So.
Yeah, I think that's the right spot for it. Okay, who am I going to pick now? Oh, you know what? Something topical, the Swarm Ward. And I say topical because this edition's the Tyranid edition. And this is the only truly named general of the Tyranids. Not there aren't named characters like your old One Eyes or the Doom of Malantai, but the Swarm Lord is a general. It's the closest thing to the Tyranid embodiment of like a Primarch equivalent, right?
Yeah, like a singular, like he's a warrior, right? He's a general as well, but also he's
Almost
comparable in that way, right? He's not he's not a monster.
And every time he dies, he's essentially gene code is remembered, and he's resurrected with the knowledge of how he was beaten last time to use the next time. Like,
very true.
On paper, it seems like that should be a very, very formidable in-universe, but it's like the Swarm Lord has worked out the Imperium's tactics after, at this point, 2,000 years of contact between the Tyranids and the Imperium?
Yeah, it's... He's a victim of being a punching bag. It's so sad. Tyranid fan in me. His next respawn, it's like he's gonna come back at that guy's power level, basically. It's kind of like how I would reason it, right? It's like, oh, he gets fine. He's never fought Marneus Calgar before, and fights Marneus Calgar, doesn't know how to deal with it, gets beat up. I roll my eyes. It's so lame. But when he spawns back next time, I would expect he's like, okay, now he knows how to counter this kind of enemy, right? But you don't get that because it's a little bit of a punching bag from a narrative point of view. That's kind of like the role he's often used in. And also, in part, this problem where it's like, well, the model is the model. You can't just simply evolve him in the way you would the Swarm Lord to always be like in this ever-changing state of evolution and battle adaptation, right?
Although that would
like
that would be cool if you could give him different biomorphs on the tabletop.
It would be so cool. Could you imagine, Maka, if you Tyranids rule set where you could have different war gear and different biomorphs? Like whatever you would need to evolve for the scenario? Like, wouldn't that be a cool idea?
Yeah, it sounds like something straight out of 4th edition 40k, but I'm probably just dreaming it. Yeah, I feel like he's in the same place, almost perfectly the same place as Ghazghkull.
Yep. It's going to be a popular spot for probably many of the Xenos factions, right? They represent that status quo, like, we're serious now, boys, right? And then
down you go, barely on the edge of the screen.
Yeah, they're all going to fight for that spot.
All right, your pick next.
I want to avoid repeating the same sort of results every time because it's probably boring. Let's maybe do some demon Primarchs. Let's talk about Magnus. Where would you put Magnus? So what's Magnus's biggest, this iteration of Magnus? What's his biggest lore point? Is it the Wrath of Magnus?
It is. Sadly,
it is, right?
It's either that or the fight. That or the fight on the moon in Gathering Storm 3. Either way, it's a turd sandwich and you're taking multiple bites.
Yeah, it's not ideal for either.
Jeez.
Well, let's talk about, and maybe you could shed some light on this. What is the potential ceiling here? Like, we spoke about the Ynnkar's ceiling and how the implications, what they could be, right? So what could like best sell Magnus and what he could be doing in 40k? Maybe that's a good way to approach this.
As a psychic Primarch, you have something here that can threaten like the Golden Throne and potentially something like the Astronomicon. Like you can imagine a Magnus going after something like the Pharos. Something like that, where it's like maybe if he could wrest control of, it seems like Magnus should have been the one who was doing like the Arcs of Omen stuff. Especially because it ties in with like the changing of ways of Tzeentch. Even though he hates Tzeentch and won't be a pawn in his schemes, now he's just, since Wrath of Magnus, he's had an about turn. He's all for that. He's all in on Big Bird schemes.
Yeah, well, I guess at a certain point, maybe you gotta become down with the sickness, Yeah,
it just feels like he should be using like his crutch's psychic powers. So he should be out there like causing issues with like the Astronomicon and making it so that like the side of the Imperium that's not stuck because of the Cicatrix Maledictum has its own troubles. Like, messing up Primaris units getting to the front lines, like Marines missing battles, that they could have won by days because of his machinations, right? And like the hunt for Magnus should be like a key thing for Guilliman. And instead, like, even though like Prospero is now being, since Wrath of Magnus, like pulled back into reality, like Sorciatus and Prospero merged as like one new planet now. It's like, well, you know he's there. You can like do anything about it? No? Okay.
I guess he doesn't have to. That's the beauty of it, right? Because Magnus...
Yeah, it's not Magnus. It's not Magnus didn't do nothing wrong anymore. It's Magnus doesn't do nothing.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Guilliman should be after Magnus. You'd think he'd be like a high priority for, you know, Lord Commander to be like, we gotta find Magnus and root out the scourge, right? It's like, oh well, if he's not doing anything, do.
Yeah, it's like knowing where Osama bin Laden is and just not sending in SEAL Team 6.
Mm. Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
there's good potential there.
I want to put him in the fail category, especially because what he means to that faction.
So. And there's some introduction or some interplay there. Webway, Black Library stuff too. Like there's interesting stuff that like explored.
Well, he's a good foil for the Eldar, right? Like he'd be good to use in Eldar-centric campaigns, but of course we can't have that. You know, like he could be like it could be even him and Fulgrim together trying to stop the Ynnari from gaining more traction. Like you could do something fun there, where like an unsteady, like an unsteady alliance where like Tzeentch is doing it just to be a dick, and Fulgrim's doing it because of the ecstasy and pleasing Slaanesh, and Slaanesh is afraid of losing his godly status. You know, so it's like the two Primarchs could both be after the same thing. It's like an enemy of my enemy situation. So
that's do something such a nice
really
foil.
Fun.
Yeah, because, and then on the Eldar side, in that scenario, you'd have the Harlequins like Kegarak and Ynnead, right? That's like, it's like the Eldar.
You could do an Avatar of the Laughing God.
Oh yeah, dude.
That'd be a great modeling opportunity.
That's like low key, not to circle things back to the Incarnate, but I feel like that's the direction the Eldar narrative should be headed. It should be trying to reclaim like Isha and their pantheon. It doesn't have to be Isha. It could be some spin-off or whatever, like a new thing. It could be like how you need a new thing, right?
They'd be great campaign books, wouldn't they? Like the hunt for Segarach, the search for Isha. Like that's, you know, they could all be themed like that.
And you bring out a new Avatar model, you know? Like that. Those are big, impactful inclusions that to me are like as or maybe even more impactful than like Primarchs coming back.
Yeah,
man, Eldar's getting a pantheon back is such a cool concept. It's so awesome.
So
yeah, sorry. Anyways, we were talking about Magnus.
Nominally Magnus, but you know what? That's a good segue. I want to do another Chaos character. I'm going to pick Vashtorr.
Yeah.
So I think Vashtorr should have been. I've said this to you before. I think he should have been the springboard for bringing back the Lion. Because, like, he broke into the rock. He was, like, rummaging around in the dungeons on the rock. It should have been him who had awoken the Lion, instead of the Lion waking up on, like, some forest planet somewhere. Like, you know, waking up from, like, his crack pipe, going, shit, how'd I get here?
Yeah, he has to go on a vision quest to find his shield.
Yeah, it should have been, like, he accidentally stumbles in the chamber where Lion has been in stasis. Like, and you know, the curiosity killed the cat situation. Like, he was looking for relics and looked in the wrong place. And no, they didn't even use him for that. He has literally nothing to do with the Lion coming back at all, even though it's separated by, like, what, months, realistically, in real life, let alone in the story of the universe.
Yeah, he did a siege on the rock, and the Lion wasn't there.
And I want to also add in there, so I got a few more thoughts. It would have been a great springboard for Dark Mechanicum. And...
Yep, I was just going to say that.
Yep, and yet the only Dark Mechanicum we've got to this date is some epic miniatures.
Yeah, well, it's pretty much just Vashtorr.
Yeah.
And Chaos Space Marines Codex as another weird inclusion that's not really part. Maybe
doesn't fit with the Marines. He doesn't fit with the demons. He has no obvious home to me currently. there's no interesting, I think, really interesting stories written around him either. So he doesn't even have the excuse of like some nice books like Fabius does. And to me, if Fabius is an epic fail, what does that make Vashtorr?
Yeah, I mean, like if Vashtorr came out and he was just the big centerpiece for a Dark Mechanicum army range, he'd probably have a more tasteful perception, at least for myself, anyways. What does he have going for him? He's like a character who wants to be a Chaos God. I don't know. To me, that's like making Morvenn Vahl a High Lord of Terra, or you know what I mean? It's like, oh, that's a cool thing to say about that guy, right? I don't know if it means anything.
You know what's funny about Vashtorr? He's basically the 40k poor man's Be'lakor. He's Bella poor. He's Bella poor.
There is a similar kind of a vibe between.
They even look kind of similar. Like they're both like winged, generic demony guys.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think if Vashtorr debuted with like, oh, here's a battle box for Dark Mechanicum, and he's the big guy who's causing an uprising, and you know, I don't particularly like becoming a Chaos God is his ambition. I don't know. Maybe there's fans out there for that. It's weird to me. It's like
it's like,
is that compelling?
No, that's not compelling at all. It would have been great if he was like a Dark Mechanicum guy rummaging around and like bringing back all these horrible dark STs, almost like the mechanical equivalent of Fabius Bile, what he does with biology. If Vashtorr was doing it with like demon engines and technology.
Him as a broker for demon engines or a fabricator of demon engines. I think that's interesting. Like I guess he foils Cawl in that way.
Yeah, and they've done nothing with him. So he has a lot of scope for cool things you can do, I think. Like, again...
Just nothing yet.
The Belisarius Cawl for the Dark Mechanicum, he could have been.
Yeah, he doesn't have as much time as some of the other characters. But also, he did debut, and you can judge him on that. And it's a pretty weak debut, I think, yeah, we're in agreement on that.
Yeah, so I'm going to put him just behind Fabius. Or do I put him in the really epic fail? I think he just hasn't made any mark. I'm going to put him actually behind Be'lakor. So he's just behind Bella poor. He is, again, like, he doesn't quite make it to the epic failure, I don't think, because he is he doesn't have that historical foundation that Fabius does.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't have that.
A lot going for him.
Fabius has that history, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, what was it someone would say in a relationship? Generational trauma of Fabius Bile. So, yeah, I'm going to put him just behind Be'lakor, right at the arse end of fail.
Right on.
Yeah, your pick.
Okay, maybe we'll jump to the Imperium side. What do you say about Voldus?
Okay, so this is an interesting one for me to add. There's 2 Imperium characters, almost in a way 4 Imperium characters. So I should really think of Ursula Creed and I forget her name, the High Lord sister's chick. It's just not a very memorable name.
Morvenn, I think, or
Morvenn something.
Morgan or Morvenn?
Morvenn. It's definitely a V in there.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's that this is a character that is introduced as a plastified, clearly a main character for the faction, to the point where this guy was included in the Triumvirate sets, right at the end of 7th edition, where the Triumvirate sets were meant to be a big deal. Every character that was in them was important. You've got like Guilliman, Cawl,
Celestine, right?
Celestine,
no? Okay.
Greyfax, the Ynnari
the Eldar
as a whole, Cypher, and Voldus. And Voldus was also the, he's a Grey Knight, and he's a Grey Knight brother captain, so he's quite senior. You know, the only guy who's outranking him is the chapter master of the Grey Knights. You know, and yet they didn't pick Brother Captain Stern, they didn't pick Calgar Drago, they picked this guy, and he's there at Cadia. He's there I think he's there at Cadia. He's fighting alongside Guilliman. You know, he partly confirms that Guilliman is not corrupted and all this kind of stuff. And then he just vanishes from the narrative entirely.
Never again.
Never to be seen again. So, what do you do with that nothing pile?
You know, my gut reaction is like moderate, but you know what? Maybe we shouldn't have such a standard. We shouldn't have such a low standard. Maybe that should be a fail, right?
I think
I don't think you should just get into the habit. I don't think we should just give a pass to GW for just coming up with cool characters and then using them for one campaign book and then let's just move on to the next character, right?
I think especially when in like his case you have, you know, it's not often Grey Knights get a character. It's basically they got Brother Captain Stern in like 3rd/4th edition, and then it was like Drago Crow in 5th edition. And
yeah, so that is a big deal to get a new one, certainly.
Yeah, that's 25% of all the characters they really have. Oh, and I guess Mordrak and his Ghost Terminator. Nobody counts him. So really, he's one of just 4 characters that faction has ever had. And he was involved with like the Primarch's Resurrection and all this stuff, and it just feels like a plot device, but without adding anywhere near as much to the universe as Cawl did. I think it's a fail.
Yeah. It's cool potential, man. Like, he's a very likable character. I mean, aesthetically, just again, like the old, wiser kind of paladin. You know, I like that kind of archetype. Very cool.
Yeah. So speaking of
unfortunate,
speaking of paladins, then I'm going to put the Lion next.
I feel like this to me is epic fail. I can't see it any other way. It could be personal bias, but man, to have the Lion come back, you kind of touched on it earlier. He didn't come back in a particularly logical way. I mean, you can't say that about Guilliman either. But, you know, he could have just woken up. It was
a low bar. Then step over and he dug under it.
That's such a... Yeah, maybe that just says it right there, right? But if you just were to recap it, like, you don't have him wake up when his home is under siege and his sons need him most, literally. It's like, yeah, you send him on this vision quest to get weird item, teleports around, and honestly, the lack of consequence after the fact where he just fucks off and goes on like recruitment missions for these like missing sons or whatever is unsatisfying to me.
It also ties into the Vashtorr thing, like I was saying earlier. Like it could have been that Vashtorr had the Dark Angels at his mercy, but the Lion saves the day. He couldn't even do that.
What a return, right? Like that would be, right? Like you're at the brink, right? You're at the end of your rope, right? And then the daddy comes home to like save the day, right? There's also then, he
never meets with Guilliman. We haven't had a meeting with Guilliman.
Huge problem, and that's like, especially because Guilliman is like, he's gotten so much characterization in this like Lord Commander role and the admin, and he's pulled in all these different directions and all this stuff. It's like we've gotten so much exposure and so many instances from his point of view. And it's just like painful that the Lion, this guy who can now teleport, has not made it. That should have been like the epilogue, like, you know, the Nick Fury moment in Iron Man 1 where it's like, now we're cooking, right?
Yeah, he could have just
the end of his
he could have just teleported out of book. He could have just teleported out of like a ficus next to Guilliman, you know, to say hello.
Out of a ficus. Is that how it works? Yes, that would.
Wait, well, hang on a minute. Like, he has to come out of a forest, right? Like, that's his ability. He can forest walk. Why doesn't Guilliman just build like an arboreum on one of his like battleships? Like, I guess whenever he needs the Lion could just come and visit him at will.
Oh no!
You know. It makes no sense. That power. That, you know what? I'm pulling one of the special meme cards out. I'm pulling one out, which, yeah, they had all the right building blocks, here we go. I've got the meme on screen now. It's the idiot trying to put the square peg in the round hole meme where he's got like the three holes.
Oh, perfect.
Yep. It's like you had all of the ingredients for a good story, Games Workshop, and he can forest walk. Yeah. So special pride of place for what you did to the lion. Yeah. He beat Angron. No one cares because Angron, who will come up, he has no real meaning in the universe. Angron just exists. It's basically Ghazghkull light at this point. We'll get to Angron. Yeah. He's on here, people.
We'll get to Angron. I think there's also something to be said for the lion coming back and not having a cultural impact to the chapter culture, right? Or the
the inner circle is still a thing.
It is just weird. Expect a hard, like a very stern evaluation and course correction in their behavior. But it's like, I don't know, Asmodai still seems to be acting with impunity, doing his thing, right? Acting in a way that I believe would be frowned upon, right? Yeah, I kind of, I don't know. And as someone who's kind of like been critical of the Flanderization of the Dark Angels and how they're interpreted often, right? I feel like this is a good device. The lion, I mean, is a good narrative device to return and then kind of like recontextualize and like course correct, and wink and a nod to the audience and like, oh yeah, we're gonna. That stuff before was kind of lame, but we're moving in a better direction because Daddy's home, right?
It feels like the lion being a bloody Primarch should be the very definition of being able to do something new with a faction.
So, yeah, I feel like if you bring your Primarchs back, well, your loyalists anyways, the ones actually been missing, and they don't have an impact or meaningful interaction with the chapter, like that's ground for failure, right?
Going around hanging out with the Fallen is
analog,
not
right.
Yeah, going around hanging out with the Fallen is not what I would call meaningful impact.
No,
because it's not a true reconciling of the Legion, where like he is there with Azrael and Belial and Samuel.
I'm not saying you have to get rid of that. I think that's fine but it's not. That can't be the primary thing he's doing, right?
Yeah.
Because when you think about like Space Marine fans and like everyone has this like little bit of wish fulfillment, like, oh, maybe one day my Primarch will come back when you see these other guys getting theirs, right? Well, look, players build the armies, and then for a Primarch to come back and not engage with the army, they're kind of, in effect, not engaging with where the player has invested. And I feel like that's awful.
So the frustrating thing there is, like, a Primarch is such a perfect thing to say, like, your Legion is so doctrinal and set in their ways, and, like, to suggest changing them is just almost seen as the utmost heresy by these legions or chapters.
Yeah.
To bring back a Primarch is like the ultimate mover and shaker. They literally worship the guy as a god. And to bring him back is like, this is the instrument of change that you need for this faction. If you're going to change anything, he can make it happen. And then they're like, so what are you going to do with him? They're like, nothing. No, are they going to be like special Fallen units that go into like the Dark Angels Codex now? Or no. so yeah, I just think it's all the right, the square peg was there. They just couldn't put it in the square hole.
He's another one that's like high potential and just waste.
Yep.
Waste.
So, yeah, who do you want to cover next? I think it's you'll
go. See here. Yeah, I'm trying to keep track. Well, let's go Xenos. Let's go, I guess, Silent King.
Yeah, the last Xenos on the list.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, viewers.
He definitely, to me, fits into that camp with like Ghazghkull and the Swarm. Like, just a super, you think, he's similar to them. Well, especially Ghazghkull. More so than the Swarm Lord, just because the Swarm Lord's so much more expendable. But the Silent King returning should be this massive, galaxy-altering shift, and it feels so weightless to me.
I think this should potentially be the bottom of epic failure almost, because
Quite possibly.
this is probably the most defining of all of them, because the Small Mord is just one creature amongst the Hive Fleet,
Yeah,
and
it's
an
something
excellent
that has
creature, but a
evolved,
creature.
right?
The Silent King
Mhm.
is the head of the entire species, the entire faction, the one who led the imprisonment of the Satan, the breaking of the gods and their imprisonment in the Tesseracts, the one who went out into the void to discover the terrors that await the Milky Way, the one who could
Yeah,
unite the Necrons, the one who understands all of the old technology of the Necrons, and for all intents and purposes is as powerful as a god. Because
yeah, I think so. Well,
that limit
they
of,
enslaved gods,
yeah,
right?
when your technology has reached such a zenith that it's almost seen as magical. He is the embodiment of that. And you know, if regular Necrons are the equivalent threat to chapter masters, if not something worse than chapter masters, where you can have your Helbrechts of the world lose to some of these Necrons in close
Like
combat.
some of these lords you're talking about,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
these. Yeah,
And this guy is terrifying to those lords.
hmm
And he's been
yeah,
built up as this threat 65 million years in the making, who can waken the tomb
yeah,
worlds of the Necrons that drove the old ones to the edge of destruction under his leadership. And they beat the Eldar, they beat the Krork, they
yeah. Yep, you're not.
and he has the ability to shut down all of Chaos's chaosiness because they can build the Necron pylons and all that. He has that technology. He's got two of these pylons floating around with him, type thing. Like how much like he is a character that should never have been put into the tabletop, because functionally he's like a Nagash in Age of Sigmar. He is a god. You cannot represent someone of his power level on the tabletop and have the tabletop function, and they brought him back, and
I
he's
what you're saying, yeah.
and then in the stories they do nothing with it, because like this to the Imperium should be like, oh crap, like if this guy wants to go us, we are screwed. We do not have the
Yeah,
technology. And
like
like the
Silent King
entire
coming
Imperium
back.
would lose this fight. Even if there were no
Uh-huh.
other threats to the Imperium,
Yeah.
if we could single-handedly focus the entire Imperium's resources against the Necrons under this guy, we would lose.
hmm Oh, he's like they kind of hedge it a little bit because they position it like he's awakening the old tomb. It's like it's escalated, If only all of the orcs united, et cetera, et cetera. Applies to like every enemy of the Imperium, right? Then the Imperium would lose if all the orcs united or all the all the Necrons, right? So they hedge it a little bit, but even then,
But the
I
threat
still
is
agree.
more
Like
real.
fundamentally,
The threat is more real because, like, Ghazghkull has to go and actually unite them. He has to go around the galaxy slowly, getting all the boys together and any shenanigans that come up comically
yeah,
along the way.
and even on an
This,
individual basis, he's still a strong entity.
yeah,
Like he's like mythic purport scale or however you want to like define it. Yeah, like godlike, like you said. I think like
and
it could be a
also
bit more
possibly,
reasonable if
but also possibly indestructible.
yeah, I mean to our knowledge, that is certainly
Like these are pretty hard threats to try and overcome, aren't they? Like, and
yeah.
he's not limited by the technology like all the other big bads are. Like you can say, oh, if the orcs get their shit together, or if the Tyranids swarms coalesce, it's like the Silent King. Like they have the technology. This is the same species that had an orrery that you could just walk into, point at a star, and that star in real time just went supernova. Like the level of technology the Necrons have is insanely beyond
hmm
comprehension. So his threat is very real and omnipresent. It's not a background threat like Ghazghkull is. I know it sounds really mean to the Orc players, but it's like he's like they have written too powerful a character in what the Silent King represents.
No, I get what you're saying. I think it's fair. It sounds incendiary, but it's fair. It's like Silent King is orders of magnitude like a bigger deal compared to Ghazghkull.
So, and yeah, I think he's the
their
Necron
high-level
equivalent of
technology-
Ynnari.
Yes, yeah, he's certainly an epic figure, right? That I think that's very safe to say. Even if you want to have him be overpowered, and then you want to have a model make it underpowered, it's just like the execution is still bad, even if the idea was like not lore accurate, or the interpretation of him was not lore, still kind of executed it poorly. Because yeah, it's like if the Silent King is, if he's sieging against the Imperium, trying to reclaim the galaxy for his people or whatever, that's like, man, that reminds me of, shit, the name escapes me at the moment. What was the Xenos race during the Great Crusade that was like the biggest problem in the Dark Angels?
Oh,
and so many legions.
Yeah, the
They lost a
Rengar.
legion.
The Rengar.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me of like that kind of level of threat. Like you need to throw a considerable amount of assets. It's the kind of thing where it's like the Silent King returns. It's like, oh, okay. So are like 3 Primarchs returning? Is that what is happening? Because I feel like that's kind of like what you kind of need to kind of keep things.
It's a Necron's version of the Emperor returning.
Effectively.
I would also add to that, like, even if you think that maybe I'm blowing the Necron technology out of proportion or whatever, I assure you I'm not. Like, I'm not even the biggest Necron fanboy. I'm more of a Necron's, like, old school 1980s Terminator style fan, not the Egyptian dudes that they are now. That's the 1,000 stun shtick, stay in your lane. But the fact is, he's not used. He was bought out for 9th edition and then vanished off the face of the earth.
Yeah, he just becomes a poster boy, kind of like a boss character.
He's just a big kit they can buy if you play Necrons. You want to buy something cool, centerpiece model.
Your big centerpiece character, which GW loves. Which I don't hate principally.
Oh, and he's also physically, he's even not including his like staircase altar. He physically is Primarch sized, bigger in fact. He's huge.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he's physically imposing as well. All right.
Yeah.
I am going to pick Cypher as the next on the list. I did hint that he was on here earlier when I was talking about, I feel like a lot of the members of the Triumvirates belong on here, but I picked. Obviously, I didn't cover the other Ynnari members because I felt the avatar of Enid did that job just fine. Like, they're a microcosm of the same issue. They
share the same problems. Yeah, exactly.
Cypher represents something different to Voldus and something different to Cawl and something different to... Cypher is like this great mystery. Who is he? What is his goal? Why has he got the Lion's Sword? He's involved in the resurrection of Guilliman and the rescue of Guilliman, and he needs to go and see the Emperor. And then it's like, and you've brought back the lion, and... Nothing to do with Cypher, even though the lion is already meeting up with the Fallen.
Yeah, it's weird. Weird, huh? Right? You make Lion do this one thing... The Cypher payoff, right? You feel like that's what he's there for, You're dangling the keys of the lion returning, and you have this one character with like, oh, he has a lion's sword.
Could even be where the lion got his sword from. Like, he could actually use his 30k sword reforged.
What is
like an
Aragorn,
like an Anduril reforged.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Instead of having to be like, I don't know, corporate says they've got to be 100% different to their 30k versions. They can't look the same in any way, shape, or form beyond the name. He must have new armor and a new sword and a shield for some reason. Like, it's like, why? Why couldn't you do that bit of fan service? Like, Cypher returns the lion's sword to the lion, and it's like symbolic of healing the rift between the Fallen and, or like maybe like he connects the lion with Luther. I don't know, like something. Anything.
It could be that. I don't know if I think there's actually lore defining Luther as like down with the chaos sickness.
He disappeared from the dungeons on Terra where he was being held by the Sisters of Silence and the Custodes. So like I guess like the lion can forest walk and what Cypher can like and he rescued Guilliman from a prison, so he can prison walk.
He can prison walk.
He just wakes up in like the prison showers, you know. He's got his soap on a rope with him.
It's like don't put a brig in your ship, or else Cypher can infiltrate.
Yeah, Cypher, you can prison walk. Anyone you got locked up, Cypher, you just blink and he's there.
When we were talking about the Lion, I forgot actually that Cypher was in the queue here, because that's another point of failure for the Lion's return, actually.
Yeah.
Because that's like another, I feel like, to me, like that's the clear thing you pay off, right? Well, other than the reuniting with the Legion, right? But obviously that should be like Arcs of Omen should have, and then Vashtorr and Cypher or something, and then the two of them, the campaign would track the two of them, and then they would both meet probably during the Siege of the Rock, and then that's when the Lion. I think it writes itself, some version of these two kind of characters interacting. It leads to such a more tasteful.
Yeah, I'm pulling out the hollow head meme for this one. The cave skull. I'm going to put him into. Do we go fail or epic fail? I've got him just sitting in fail, but pretty low down, sort of in the Bellic or Vashtorr area.
I feel like it's epic fail. See, he's a weird one, right? Because if
I'm comfortable with an epic fail,
I would put him at moderate if a Lion didn't come out, because I would make the argument like, well, let's wait and see, right? We know the Lion's gonna come back at some point. It could all be worth it, guys. Let's just wait and see, right? Let them cook, right? That's the argument I would make. But now the Lions come back, and it had fuck all to do with Cypher.
Yeah,
like it's a waste, like just a waste of this cool kind of character. You read it in plastic fairly recently, and made it very compelling. And it has the Lion sword. What's that gonna do? Is he gonna deliver the sword back? Is that gonna turn him back from stone, so to speak? I don't know. There's so many ways you could go about bringing back the Lion. Yeah, waste. Huge waste. Cypher's a big old waste.
All right.
Big sad.
So you've got the next one. We're down to 3.
Who's remaining? We have Angron, and I don't have them cross. I'm not looking at your screen here. Oh, we have the chariot lady. And that's
no. We replaced her with Cypher.
Replaced her with Cypher?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it's spoilers. Angron, Trajann Valoris, and Abaddon are the remaining.
Oh, right. Okay. So I guess we can talk about Abaddon. I think he's probably okay, honestly. He's done a thing. A pretty impactful thing. Not as ever present as Guilliman, but similar in that, I know
what has it meant for the setting?
Well, all it does for the setting is give Abaddon like the this sounds rude. an illusion of a win, right? It's like he did it, right? He split the galaxy in two. He's done a victory. It was all leading to this, right? I think splitting the Imperium is an interesting idea, but even that, you could put splitting the Imperium in this tier list. It's like, what have you done with it, right?
Yeah,
really, right?
My point of view on any of this stuff is that it is an advancement of the plot, but because it actually means nothing to anything, no matter what. I'm going to put another meme up. All the people, simpletons, congratulating Games Workshop for their work on the Cicatrix Maledictum. You get your own meme right in the middle of the board. Because what is different now? You go, travel is really hard in the warp. It was hard already. Demons can spontaneously happen on worlds affected by warp storms. They did already. That's literally the whole reason you could play demon armies in games of 40k. Like, they could just spontaneously manifest on your planet one day. It's just bad luck if it happened to you. the Imperium is cut off. It's like, so has it completely collapsed on the other side? Like, oh no, they're holding it together. In fact, they've actually got Primaris Marines and waves of reinforcements that come by like constantly. So it doesn't really matter that they're like split apart. So it's like, what is the actual impact? Like, they destroyed Cadia. Has the Force of Chaos marched on any other planets?
Well, you say they destroyed Cadia, but
well, yeah, even that is pretty.
Cadia is, yeah.
I mean, we still have, Ursula Creed. Cadian pattern is still the pattern. The Imperium has not evolved in the 1,000 years since the destruction of Cadia. Like, the equipment hasn't evolved. The patterns of armor are completely stagnated. They haven't had any other guards and worlds impact on them. No, it's just a total nothing burger. His achievement is a non-achievement. He can't do anything. Like, he's out of the Eye of Terror. That has not led to any more Chaos campaigns, not led to the destruction of any chapters that matter, or their home worlds. It's just a character who because he's like a Ghazghkull, he's like a Swarm Lord. You can't let him have the win. That would upset the setting too much.
Yes. Well, okay, so I agree, like, with that kind of characterization. Like, he's like the Ghazghkull, just the poster boy, big bad face. I think he's better than they are, though, right? Because yes, in Arcs of Omen and in can't really get the win that you'd like him to have. And I do agree that the splitting of the galaxy is kind of like wasted, because like, how cool would it be, man, if on the light side, the connected side of the Imperium, that's where all the Primaris stuff is, and on the other side it's like, oh, it's all Firstborn and it's fucking old school, and then it gives you like the best of both worlds. Like, which side of the galaxy is your fucking chapter from, right? You could have this kind of duality, these two settings almost, right?
Yeah.
But because that's not the case, and there's nothing really tangibly different, as you said, everything kind of was before, except now there's this line in the sand. Yeah, it is like wasted, but I think narratively, I still think it is a win in the way the others have not had a win. I just think it's poorly executed.
But
right?
What if?
No.
What if? Hear me out here.
Mm-hmm.
You think of Abaddon as a Saturday morning cartoon villain.
No.
Like,
okay, I'm listening.
He's your Skeletor to Guilliman's He-Man, because every time he pulls off these dastardly tricks, no matter which henchman, it's Harkon World Claimer, take the planet from them. He fails, and because he is toothless and has had no wins, he's not a threat. It's not threatening. He's the Kylo Ren of Warhammer 40,000. It's like, oh, look, every time you've fought Rey Skywalker or Rey Palpatine or Rey whoever, you've lost. You're lost in the first film, right? You're lost in the second. Guess what happened the third time out, right? Like, he's a loser. Losers are not threatening.
It hurts me to say it. I want him to be like...
Ghazghkull's not a loser.
Substance.
Swarmlord is not a loser because he can keep coming back, right? And like, he's designed to get better when he loses. Abaddon is a loser with nothing to his... He couldn't even kill Cadia with 9 Chaos Legions, untold Renegade chapters, untold hordes of demons, beastmen, guardsmen, Titan, traitor Titan legions, 3 Blackstone fortresses. He couldn't even fire one at the planet, maybe? Instead, all he could think of was just to crash a Blackstone fortress into the planet. That was it. I think he's a total waste of a character. It's not just a moderate, like, oh, they could do more with him. It's everything they've done with him has just made it look like he's an incompetent buffoon.
Yeah, I perhaps...
Maybe we have to meet halfway.
Judging him... Well, maybe I'm just judging him, like, too favorably. I really want Abaddon to be, like, respectable, right?
Yeah, we want to, right? That's our fan bias.
Yeah, but it's like that's not the execution we have. Like, Abaddon on paper, conceptually, might be what I would like him to be, but in terms of the execution Games Workshop has done, it's like, they didn't really adapt these satisfying, right? To get the result that would be accurate to what you would like him to do.
Abaddon painted his armor black and made the Legion change their armor to black and become the Black Legion as a mark of shame. He says Horus was weak and a fool and puts him down for failing to defeat the Emperor at Terra. And Abaddon couldn't even crack a fucking guard world.
Yeah, I hate that line of his. I hate that.
Every part of it is like
Black Legion stands love that shit.
It's like he's gonna have to.
No.
Yeah, they sit there. They get another meme. I put another meme on the board. Clap, clap, clap. Wow. You don't understand
cool.
All those other crusades, the Black Crusades. His 10,000 years of planning and all those new forces that he
it was all.
It's all
will tell you,
just as planned.
You don't get an optical win by shitting on your dad. I'm sorry. That's not how it works.
It's just, it's like a reverse Alexander the Great.
It's very edgy.
You know how Alexander the Great follows on from Philip of Macedon, who's this monumental figure. And if it wasn't for Alexander the Great, you'd be talking about Philip the Great of Macedon. Instead, his son comes along and just completely outshines him, this amazing man. And Abaddon is like the inverse of that. It's like just a total shitbag. So, I just think he's an epic fail because, this is the Emperor equivalent for Chaos. Okay, he's not on par with the Emperor strength-wise, but he is empowered by all of the Chaos Gods, the uniter of the Chaos Legions, and he just presents just an absolute paper bag of a villain, a wet paper bag of a villain. So, for me, I think he's an epic fail, but I will leave it up to you where to put him in the rankings.
I will either put him at the top of fail or the bottom of. You can. I'm more than happy to put him because I can't argue against your points, right? I just come back to this idea where it's like, man, how can I spin this? How can I spin this guy to be cool, right?
Yeah, I think that's the problem, right? If you've got to spin it, that's telling you so much. So Abaddon, he goes down the bottom, pretty much hidden from sight, just like he's hidden from us in the game. All right, so I don't want to end on Trajann Valoris, so I'm going to pick him next. So that way, at least we can end on a Primarch. Trajann Valoris, the Captain General of the Custodians. This is the successor to Constantine Valdor.
Yeah, I feel like aesthetically, he hasn't done much, man. Honestly, okay. So second, and then he was like, when the rift appeared, and there was those hours of darkness or whatever. There was a second siege on Terra with horned demons or something like this, and then him and the Custodians, they rolled out to defend the Imperial Palace, and I think that's the coolest thing he's done in since. I don't think he's been a part of much of any Black Library novels. He was in the he was in the Regent's Shadow books, I think, with the Custodians on Terra, the more politically right books. I quite like his writing, but it's minor. I don't think he's had a meaningful impact to the lore. He's just mentioned here and there in a Custodians book by various characters in that kind of lip servicey kind of way, right?
Yeah, the you must mention some of our product range in your books that they love to do.
Yeah.
I love that in Horus Heresy novels. The early Horus Heresy novels just talk about things that authors thought were interesting. The late Horus Heresy novels are so he was in the Deimos Patent Vindicator Laser Destroyer. Regular retail price suggested is $59.99. Expert kit recommended for hobbyists.
Exactly as listed in the store.
Yeah. He's kind of like that, but it's you kind of get an inkling of just how uninspired. It's almost like they didn't even realize when they named him the Captain General of the Custodians how important a rank and position that is within the faction. Because it's like, this should be the equivalent of your Dantes, your Azraels, your Marneus Calgars, and like Marneus Calgar is a bigger, more imposing model on a bigger base than this guy is.
Yeah, it's a problem. I think,
and he's supposed to have like
over.
He's supposed to have like this relic. He's got access to the relics. He's got the Emperor's like personal war gear, like personal armory to pick from.
All there.
And he's like, just that axe looks like it'll do. You know, that halberd, cool. You know, I've got a couple of feathers.
I bet if they could have a duo base, like even like Halberd has a 60mm base, right? Like the one they want to be the big centerpiece HQ on a Primarch comparable kind of way, right? Do
you remember Ixion Hale, the custodian character from Forge World, how he's walking down like that marble staircase?
That's an awesome model.
That is what this should be.
It's so regal. Yeah.
You know, he should have a base like the original Horus sculpt from Forge World, like the crushed Aquila with like the big like staircase and balustrade. He should be on something like that, like standing on the walls of Terra itself or something, with maybe like dead blood letters at his feet, representing that only real instance of him having any tabletop time. But it's like, this is
he's lacking that majesty, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it also doesn't help that you put aside they have kind of this too.
he is a Lord of Terra.
At least in the preview you shared with me.
He's a High Lord of Terra.
Mm-hmm.
He should have probably, like Guilliman has his 2 honor guards. Calgar has the 2 honor guards. Maybe he should have something like that, like a couple of honor guard custodians who, like, you know, like the banner bearer, maybe like the ancient, the herald.
Yeah, I can dig with that. That's sweet.
You could have one who has, it could be like the Romans. You know, the guy could have like the leopard pelt. You know, you have the guy who has the lion or the leopard pelt that he wears that's holding like the standard.
Nice.
You can have something like that, you know, this is a Lord of Terror. He probably has dudes like that who walk around with him, like probably some guy following him, some like ministerium lackey who's like, you know, praise be his name, you know, and like has to read the long list of like, you know, the 10,000 names that he's been bestowed in his, you know, it's just some ridiculous thing. Like, no, he got none of that. He's just completely unfleshed out for the guy who, if the Emperor was alive, would be his number 1 companion.
Excellent point. Yeah, he just even aesthetically, he lacks that prestige or that majesty that big names here have, right? I think if you put him on a roster beside any other Custodes character, I think it'd be hard to kind of have him stand your other commanders do amongst their range.
And I mean, he
blends in too well.
He was also the character for them. Like, much like how I was saying that Voldus was one of 4 for the Grey Knights.
Mm-hmm.
He is that for 40k. He is their character. There's like one other that's sort of custode/sister combo that they did recently, but I mean,
that's like a Black Library novel. Character. It's not the same.
Yeah, so it's this guy. This is their character. This is their faction. He is the head of the faction until the Emperor, you know, comes back. And he's a High Lord of Terror, and he's in charge of the Custodes, and he would have all these responsibilities. You know, you think he would also be butting heads with Guilliman about, you know, because like the Emperor's safety and the sake of the Imperium is his first priority. You think that would be a great grounds for tension with Guilliman? Like, no, you're not taking my custodians to fight the wars out in the galaxy. Our place is here defending Terra. We've just had a demon incursion here, proving that it can happen at any time. Like,
there is...
I mean, you showed up out of the blue on the fucking moon fighting Magnus.
There is a bit of that plot thread in
but it's
Black Library stuff, but it's not done through Trajann. It's done through other...
Yeah, so I just feel he's so underutilized. I think he belongs right next to Voldus in the fail not like an epic fail, but just a fail of, like, if you're going to have this character, especially what he means to the players of that faction, do something with it.
Yeah,
get him a better model to start with.
Yeah, that I was just going to say, it's like biasing feelings here a lot. It's just like the lack of presence for what he should be.
So
right, at least Morvenn Vahl is big.
yeah, at least the model's impressive if you think it's cool. I'm just going to move some of my memes out of the way now.
That's a big caveat if you think she's cool.
So I guess you get the last one.
We're at Angron, correct?
Yeah. Angron.
Okay. Yeah, so Angron. So I actually didn't have a huge bar of expectation for Angron and his impact in the lore. So there was less of a. I was just less disappointed. It's like, oh, if they whiffed it, I'd be like, okay, well, I don't know. Maybe this is another one of these cases where you could sell me on what Angron could add, because I kind of feel he's, especially once they make him like a respawnable meme type character. Even though all demons do that,
every
right?
80
all demon Primarchs have that ability, and he just does it more.
Yeah, what is it? The 8 weeks, 8 days, and 8 hours he comes back, and it's like, oh, so every 4 months, 1 day, and it's and 8 hours. And so, no, and it's like, so hang on, and why is Khorne using like Terran time? Like, why is he using a human clock?
I thought the warp is outside of time.
Well, but not just that. Like, at least if he was from Earth, that would make sense. But Angron's from Nyseria, which is like a foreign planet on another part of the galaxy. So, like, at the least, he would use like, wouldn't he use like gladiator time? Like,
gladiator, nice.
It's so stupid. Okay, what impact could he have on the setting? Well,
yeah, like, is he's just a force of, he's a spear tip guy, right? Like, he wants to go hard.
The problem is becoming a demon has not improved his combat prowess. He peaked when he was still alive. He died to Sanguinius. He has died now to Lion, who I think bludgeoned him to death with a shield. So he died to Space Captain America.
That's a problem.
So he's not the mincemeat unstoppable blender that he should be, which means that his threat level,
like an Abaddon problem, right?
Yeah, his threat level is immediately lowered like 10 points. If because
in concept he would be.
It takes a Primarch to kill him, but it's like, but if the Primarch that killed him doesn't even need to be a demon level Primarch, like, then what did demonhood actually achieve for him beyond, like, you can't say immortality. The others are immortal. So
yeah,
like,
well,
becoming a demon
ability is what you get. You get to,
but in which case,
die,
dying and coming back, like, that's not a problem for Guilliman and the Lion. They just sort of heal naturally. It just takes a while. So even like Slaneshi Poison Blades could put down Guilliman.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Like, I'm with you. It's
so like
you should be stronger. Reasonably, you should be stronger. I mean, you are,
but you trade off for like weakness to anti-demon stuff, right? Because you're now more warp. You're now more a creature of the warp. So it's like
you're a creature of the warp.
Your true name is a weakness. You've lost your free will. Yep. You're beholden to the ebbs and flows of the warp. So like you can be defeated by just essentially. Scorched Earth is a way to defeat Angron. Like when Napoleon was advancing through Russia and the Russians just said okay, and they just torched Moscow and burned all the fields. It's like, okay, Napoleon, looks like winter's coming. You're going to feed your army. You got shelter. Oh no, you planned for a summer campaign. That's the same thing with Angron, right? Like the Imperium could be, was it Cryptman? Led the Tyranids into the Orcs? It could be something like that where the Imperium's like, well, we just got to sacrifice worlds so that there's nothing to cause carnage for the demons of Khorne to feast upon. You know, like this horrible moral quandary, the catch-22 of like, what do? You can't evacuate these worlds. How do you nullify them so that he can't just land and slaughter the populace to grow in strength and sustain his blood crusades?
It's an interesting point. It gets me thinking, like, maybe that would have been like a good consequence to have from Abaddon's Rift, right? Maybe that's something that is less of an issue. Maybe that's the case. I mean, I don't know. But I'm with you. Yeah, obviously Demon Primarchs should be stronger. If Angron, every iteration we see him as a Demon Primarch in lore, is actually getting dummied by the standard untainted Primarchs, then yeah, it is a disservice to his interpretation and what he's bringing to the setting, certainly. Right?
Where do you...
But yeah.
I mean, he should be an unstoppable force in nature where it's like he's coming your way, there is nothing you can do about it. You know, a good moral quandary for a race like the Tau. You know, it's good contrast too, where it's like a Dakar army versus a close combat army. You know, a good way to have a campaign that is Tau-centric. Congratulations, you've just bumped into the World Eaters. You know, take your prize in cash or chain axes. You know, and for the Tau, who don't have a huge presence in the warp, you know, because of their weird biology. I personally believe, by the way, the Tau are the Necrontyr reborn. Like, they're a culmination of, like, a rebirth of the species. And the ultimate Necron plan is to, like... Because they kind of look the same. And they're high-tech race. Yeah, I'm like, maybe, like, you know, you can put, like, the Necron souls back into, like, Tau bodies. Anyway, I digress. It would be a good campaign to have, is, like, the World Eaters running into the Tau, where it's, like, can superior firepower put down raw aggression? Is the Tau enough, like, of a body to feed upon, stay in a blood crusade, you know, rather than just like, oh, Angron's traipsing around, and then just like the Lion just like, you know, sit at the kitchen table and they're like, oh, Angron's outside again wanting to fight you, and he like sighs, you know, finishes his coffee, stands up, puts his hat on, you know, puts his boots on.
Yeah, it's definitely that energy.
Just like walks outside and he's like, do I have to teach you this lesson again, old man? And just, you know, kills him again. It's like, all right, see you in 8 months, you bastard. It's, you know, like,
well, yeah, kind of written yourself into I mean, not entirely, but that becomes certainly more likely to happen when you make your thing is that you can resurrect yourself.
Well, Demon Primarchs have become the Avatar of Cain, right? The Avatar of Cain used to be this character killed an Avatar of Cain. It was a big deal for Marnis Calgar and for Fulgrim. And now it's like, that's what Angron exists to be. It's like, what is my purpose? You exist to show how strong other characters are. Oh my god.
Yes. I mean, often is less than ideal writers.
You could have had Angron versus Ghazghkull, both trying to take Armageddon, and the Imperium's just stuck in the middle. You know.
Yep, that's
there's definitely a winner of a campaign there, because you don't need to have a definitive victor. You can have Ghazghkull banish Angron, but knowing Angron's going to return, or you can have Angron wound Ghazghkull, but Ghazghkull is empowered by Gork and Mork and survives to fight another day, and he vows vengeance upon him, you know?
Yeah, he's like finally a worthy scar.
Yeah, you know, the meme...
It could be cool.
Like,
it could be cool.
Is it the meme, like, Angron killed... what's his face with the Ghazghkull's nemesis, Commissar Yarrick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Ghazghkull... And Angron's like to Ghazghkull, like, you're gonna die for that mortal, and Ghazghkull like rolling up his sleeve, someone is, you know, you know, that's a fun campaign. It's a fun story that you could do with the and it immediately solves both of the characters' problem of having nothing to do in the universe, because Congratulations, they could fight one another in a stalemate. Until you figure out something more productive to do with them, it is satisfying enough. Because it shows, like, Ghazghkull's no slouch. He can take a demon Primarch. He's that powerful now. And conversely, Angron's no slouch. He's not just getting bodied to show how weak he is.
Yeah, that's probably the... Man, I want that timeline.
Yeah.
Then in that timeline, you probably get Vashtorr, or the Lion waking up because of Vashtor's siege. It's way more interesting.
The ultimate timeline. So where do we put him then on the list? I feel like he's probably in the same league, therefore, as Ghazghkull and Swarmlord.
Is that moderate?
Moderate, yeah. Down the arse end of moderate in the you're so close to flunking.
Yep, I think that's fair. Again, I'd kind of like the least expectations for Angron. Maybe it's because I have maybe it's not a good thing to have.
I just think First War of Armageddon, you know, you could bring back... I mean, hell, you could bring back Grey Knights and Drago as a campaign for a nemesis for Angron. There are lots of individual factions that he matches well against.
Yeah, it didn't have to be the new Primarch that just came back.
Not at all.
You could have them come back in the same campaign and they... You know, those Primarch battles, but for the introduction, it definitely is...
So, here is the conclusive lists of who has and hasn't had the impact on the lore. Who has been used, abused, and misused. Guilliman has had a huge impact on the lore. Indescribable impact, and to this day continues to have an impact. So Guilliman is right up the top and good. Then we have Belisarius Cawl, not far behind Guilliman up the top, because he, again, continues to have uses to this day, releasing horrible Primaris models on the tabletop.
Hater.
You gotta love to hate it, right?
Something.
Then we have one tier down in the okay, more can be done with you, but you're in an okay place so far. And the only participant there is Mortarion. So
funny.
Yeah. Once more, isolated and alone. Eat shit, dirtbag. Alright. Then in the to many men, moderate success is another aspect of failure. Total, bland, moderate, nothing being done of any interest with them. We have Marneus Calgar, the former #1 Space Marine, completely overshadowed by every single thing his Primarch does. Ursula Creed, who is not Ursula Creed. Morvenn Vahl, who is apparently on the High Lords of Terror Council, has a big, shiny, awful, to me, looking model, and is also present in the lore and the tabletop, apparently. Then we have...
That is accurate.
Yep. Then we have the trifecta of Ghazghkull, Angron, and Swarmlord right at the bottom of the tier, barely hanging in there in the, hey, you should probably be doing a lot more in this galaxy. What are you guys up to? And what is the company doing with you? And the company's just sitting there with their little blocks trying to go, I don't know, what do you do with two guys that like fighting and close combat and their factions live to fight? They're looking at Ghazghkull, looking at Angron, looking at Ghazghkull, looking at Angron. They're like, more Primaris Marines.
Yeah, it's just too hard, right? Because it's like, yeah, we all look at this tier and be like, what are they doing with them? Because they could be doing something interesting. But it's very clear, it's like, oh, well, new product has to do something. Not old product.
They even look like they want to fight. It's just, yeah. So that rounded out the middle tier, everyone. I promise you, from here on, it only gets more disappointing. So right at the very top of the fail tier, where it's just you failed to do anything interesting at all with these characters, and you've had sufficient time to do so. So, you know, like they haven't really had that with like your Ghazghkull and your Angron. Right? They're only, 2-3 years. Farsight, bit of a different story. Farsight you've had since 3rd edition 40k. You know, and the most interesting thing you've managed to do since then is to say that he's got his own sub-empire. Like, cool story, bro. The most interesting character in the Tau faction, and nothing is happening. So, that I consider a fail. Then we have Magnus, the Psychic Primarch, the one who can power the Golden Throne, disrupt the webway, cause bizarre demon incursions, the avatar in many ways of the trickster god of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, the only thing he achieved so far is to mildly hinder Guilliman's vacation plans, as well as disrupting the gene set of the Spaceballs, which was swiftly rectified by them getting Primaris Marines and actually becoming stronger than they were before the Wrath of Magnus. So, yeah, that's a thing. Then we have Voldus, the first Grey Knight character in a very, very long time, in a decade, in fact. And so far, he has participated in the background of several chapters of The Gathering Storm. Then we have...
That's such a disappointment. Poor went out for my boy Voldus. Jeez.
Then we have Trajann Valoris, who has, despite being the successor to Constantine Valdor, the man who would be the #1 companion of the Emperor, especially with no Melkador around, if the Emperor was to be reborn, because obviously the Emperor is not so close to his Primarchs. He always favoured his custodians more, for better or worse. This guy would be hanging out with him, and nothing says that about his character. High Lord of Terror doesn't matter. I won't say the model's crap. I think it's a crap representation of what he should be.
Yeah, I think
the model is perfectly serviceable. Yeah, it's perfectly serviceable as a custodian character. Poor representation of the head of the order, even down to like what they've done with the base, the paint scheme. It's just uninspired in many ways. I'm not asking for Valdor's horrible 30k model, but something more would have been nice. Then we have Be'lakor and Be'lapor. Be'lakor and Vashtorr, who are really the same thing. Be'lakor accidentally escaped into 40k from Age of Sigmar. Nobody knows what to do with him beyond just buffing their 40k armies. And Vashtorr is essentially Be'lakor. He is to Be'lakor what Star Wars The Force Awakens was to A New Hope. It's just the poor imitation version. Yeah, Be'lakor, you want to become a Chaos God, so they punished you? Yeah, well, I want to be a Chaos God too. Oh, cool, bro. Like, he seems like he's trying so hard to be as cool as Be'lakor, and like, he looks like the kind of guy that Be'lakor would just be like, oh, fuck, not this guy again, you know, just sort of like turns away and shields his face, like, oh, is he walking over this way? Fuck, I don't want to talk to this cunt. Fuck, yeah. Here he is. Hey, Vashtorr. Cool to see you
Mr.
again.
Incredible and Billy or whatever.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. And they're so similar as well as models. It's just like Be'lakor has like the one like clawed hand. Vashtorr has the clawed hand. They're both got their demonic weapon with wispy shit coming off it. They're both like goat legs, demon boys with horned heads, very generic demons. They've both got their tattered wings. Just Be'lakor is just 110% cooler in every way. And yeah, so Be'lakor and Be'lapor. And then we get into the ultimate fails, the characters who had the most potential story-wise and have just been so heavily squandered by the company because of the storytelling potential. We have Fabius Bile, the guy who had the most means and methods up his sleeve to create superior, threatening Chaos Space Marines that would invoke an Imperium counter-response, and has successfully failed in every endeavor he has ever undertaken. It doesn't matter that he's got stories around him. It doesn't matter that the model hanging out with him is literally harvesting gene seed from a Primaris Marine. He doesn't know what the fuck he could even do with it, I guess. He's like...
Yeah, it's just a clear case of, like, he should have... His ability should have major implications for Chaos Space Marines at large.
A cool kit of, like,
it gives
models,
you, like,
right?
+1 strength. Pick it, his unit gets +1 strength, or whatever it is, right?
It should have been a custom unit on the tabletop, at least. Let alone what would happen in story modes.
His own, like, freaks, right?
Yeah.
That he rolls with.
And yeah, I guess he practices, like, kids' science and chemistry. You know, he, like, mixes bicarb soda and vinegar together, and he's like, look, I made a chaos volcano. Ah!
Oh, gosh.
Just...
That's how... What else are you led to believe, right?
Well, that's what he's achieved in 10,000 years. It's a chaos volcano. Abaddon the Despoiler, the Skeletor of Warhammer 40,000. I will get you next time, Guilliman. And yeah,
much to my chagrin. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
We don't want him to be. I would really stress this point. We don't want him to be at the arse end of the bottom of this list. And thankfully, there are worse contenders. But he is, without a doubt, he's failed spectacularly. And like, I know you wanted to put him higher, but that's just the bias in you going, I want him to be higher, I think.
Yeah, he needs to have...
He needs to win.
It's a Bile problem, like, exacerbated, because he talks down about Horus, and yet, right?
And he has the most means of affecting actual chaos against the Imperium.
Yeah.
Like,
he didn't let himself go insane. The way Horus gets a free pass.
He needs...
Well, they wrote him that way.
Yeah, he needs a good win against an equal character. Like, you can't have him fight like a Kato Sicarius or a Dante, and they're not a threat to him.
Mm.
He is beyond them, and we know he is beyond them because of the chaos buff. So, like, when he defeats those characters, it's not a win. It's like so you fucking should. That's like putting a guardsman up against Calgar. You know, like, he needs to fight a Primarch and beat a Primarch if he's going to be himself a physical threat. And if he's going to be a strategic threat, he needs to actually outmaneuver and win a campaign against a Primarch. And he has failed at all of that. So, yeah. And then the Lion, whose ability to manifest from ficus trees knows no limits. And that's all they've done with him. Apparently now he travels from forest to forest. He's had no interactions with Cypher, no interactions or change. He's really he had an impact on his legion. All he's doing is just sort of assembling, putting together a team.
I want, like, a major call. Like, all these, like, stories of the Dark Angels over the years, my eyes where, someone's gonna find out about the Fallen, so we need to destroy them completely, right? This other chapter's gonna find out, let's destroy them, right? All of these, like, cringe stories, to me anyways. And, like, I want the Lion to, like, address that and reform that aspect of the chapter's culture. Because Azrael, you're right, Azrael is, like, you can't go against what's been set in place. They're too rigid, they're too, like,
dogmatic,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, so the Lion, it's like, and again, in his case, it doesn't matter if he's beaten Angron, nobody cares. Obviously, there's a crowd clapping for the author, like, yeah, but, like, come on, like, the consequences for the universe are not there, because, 2 months, 1 week, and 1 day later, and 8 hours, Angron's coming back, so, like, it doesn't matter. Cypher. Yep, exact same thing. Like we said before, Voldus, Trajann Valoris, very much the same problems. Abaddon, Fabius, same problems. Cypher and the Lion, same problems. Interesting character, huge backstory, huge history, massive impact to that faction in the setting, because the Dark Angels, that all of their successes are directly impacted. All of the Fallen directly impacted. Luther and the Lion both impacted. No interaction, no impact. Hasn't even been mentioned, I don't think, since, like, him personally, I don't think it's really been mentioned since the Gathering Storm. There might be some back description in some book, but Why is he carrying the wide sword? Doesn't matter. Means nothing. Next.
Yeah, now it doesn't. Like it's such an interesting, right?
It feels like it should be like
what's the payoff gonna be?
Yeah, it feels like it should be like a returning Excalibur to Arthur.
Very much so.
You know, it could have been part of the awakening ritual or something. Anyway, it doesn't matter because the lion just woke up and found a sword in his hand. The avatar of Ynnari, the Eldar's shot at redemption, the glimmer of hope for their species, for all Eldar species, the Dark Eldar, the regular Craftworld Eldar, the Harlequins, even though they are protected by the Laughing God, we know, but still, they wouldn't need the Laughing God's protection if there was no Slaanesh.
Yeah, well, look, even if you're protected by the Laughing, obviously restoring your pantheon to its like original glory is a win. Like they'd be for that, and they are. Like Harlequins are in support of Ynnari.
Yes, they've helped him on many occasions. Obviously, the Eldar trapped on Crone worlds, the few that there are, and the Eldar Exodites, as well as the Eldar Corsairs, they are all wanting to be free of having to, the fall to Slaanesh. So this is a big win for everything Eldar related, and you think they would be bending all of the species' resources, really, working together to try and enact this to happen. And nothing has been done with it since its introduction. We've had nothing done with this concept, let alone any other related concept. It's just like, well, if you can bring back this god, Isha, Segorach himself, who we know is still around, like, could you assemble enough of these to bring back hope to the species? Nah, that's a question for 14th edition.
Maybe. I'm skeptical.
Yeah, let's not put money on that. And of course, the last one on the list, the Silent King, a threat who realistically shouldn't even exist in the game because he is such a high... He's such a high-end, right? Almighty, all-knowing, god-level character. Because he is the character who led the Necron faction and who led them to victory against the Old Ones. He successfully did what the Emperor could not do with the Primarchs and the Great Crusade. He did conquer the entire galaxy. He did drive every competitive species to extinction. He messed up the Krork so badly that the Krork became the Orcs. He destroyed the Satan Star Gods, who were some of his primary weapons in this endeavor. He's been 65 million years plotting. It's not Abaddon's 10,000 years of plotting. 65 million years of introspection and plotting and examining the threats of the galaxy and surveilling them. And all of this culminated in an absolute nothing release beyond it's a cool model.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Like, just to drive home that he succeeded where the Emperor failed, effectively, right? Like, what's the consequence for his species? It's like if the Imperium had shards Zinch that they could use against their enemies, right? Like, that's the outcome that the Necrons have achieved, right? Because of his efforts.
Yep.
He's a big fucking deal, this guy.
He so heavily depopulated the Milky Way galaxy. The Necrons just said, well, let's just go to sleep for 65 million years and we'll see if anyone's around when we wake up. Like, they thought it would take that long for enough life to come back in the galaxy. And again, Necrons' technology is so advanced. They have world engines that are unspeakable power that whole Imperial battle fleets of multiple chapters can't even take on in a fight, and have only been stopped through sheer plot luck. This is the same race that does not use warp travel. Their ships just defy the laws of physics and can travel faster than light with no risk of damage. They're self-regenerating species, self-regenerating metal makes up all of their equipment and themselves. The same species that had an orrery, so like the room in Prometheus of like a hologram of all the floating stars in the entire galaxy, and you could just walk up and touch one of these stars, and it goes supernova in real time. That's a weapon that these guys just have laying around. And the Emperor was equipping the Marines with bolt guns in the Great Crusade. And this guy has that.
Crude.
The Emperor spends decades on the Webway project just trying to get humans' technology to interact with the Eldar Webway. This guy can just bypass the Webway. If he wanted, he could literally wipe out Terra. He could just go to one of those orrery rooms, which we know there are multiple of, and just go, oh, that's the Terran sun. Tap.
Oh, we can't talk about that.
Like, that is the level of overpowered, and that's why this character shouldn't be in the setting. Like, it has to exist as a non-playable, just a whisper of a dream of in the background, right? It has to be like an old one. It has to be something so removed from the tabletop and the stories. It's just a whisper, a nameless fear, you know, like the Hive fleets are. But what if, scenario of what if this guy comes back? It's like, he has this technology at his disposal. So he's just so overpowered, the only thing holding him back is plot. And that's why he's at the bottom of the list. The most epic failure to ever epically fail.
Mm-hmm. I remember thinking, oh, this guy's coming back? Dude, this is going to change everything. Nothing will be the same.
What it felt like.
Because obviously.
It's what it felt like. It felt like he should have had this massive... Again, this is the one guy who has the means to take on the Imperium. Not an Imperium divided, like being beset on all sides by the other species. He's one who could just take on the Imperium head on and probably win. Without even pointing out the crazy tech. He could just get all the Necrons together. Like, if you took all of the Orcs and put them against the Imperium as a whole, the Imperium probably wins. They get bloodied in the fight.
Yeah, I think so.
It's just the Orcs with the Imperium being hit by Chaos on one flank, the Tau on another, the Eldar on another. That Imperium is weak to all of the Orcs. That Imperium is weak to the Tyranids.
Mm-hmm.
But the Imperium, even the Great Crusade height of the Imperium, is not beating the Necrons. And again, I really want to stress this, but I'm not a Necron fanboy. It's just they're written to be that OP. Remember, the Necrons beat the old ones.
Yeah, no, we just have to look at the outcome, right? The success of the Silent King or the Emperor failed, effectively, right? Like, he enslaved his nemesis, right? His star gods, right? He now you have
defeated literal gods.
Transcendent deceivers, or, shard of the deceiver, shard of the void dragon, right? Like, his nemesis, his god nemesis are enslaved. Yeah, that just tells you everything.
Yeah, and
meanwhile, where's the Emperor? He's stuck in this chair, bro.
Yeah, the Emperor can't regenerate like the Silent King can, and that's the other thing. The Silent King, for all we know, is indestructible. He's made of the most pure necrodermis material that there is, right? Like, he is just he's like the T-1000 in Terminator. You shoot him, it just like liquid metal just heals back up. For all we know, he's immortal, functionally. Indestructible. Like, maybe you can like dump him into a star, you might get him. But it would probably take a Necron level weapon to kill that kind of Necron.
Probably.
Like, whatever he broke the Satan with is probably what you would have to use on him.
Like, I'm sure he can teleport. I'm sure it's like he's...
Yeah, because I think...
probably all right.
So I think, like, the body that... Like, because the bodies that they built to house the Satan is pretty much the body they built for him, right? Like, size-wise, it's about the same. It's the same material. So I'm guessing that he's probably as tough as a Satan.
That he's certainly going to be like as tough as could be, and given that we can look at like their technology standards and defensive standards are already above average than everyone else's, it's like, yeah, he's going to be super nigh impossible to destroy.
Yeah. So anyway, on that depressing note, I think that takes us to the end. So a little clap to ourselves there.
We did it.
We got through it, and basically we've worked out that out of 21...
For most of the bigwigs, right?
Yeah, for all the bigwigs of pretty much all of the major factions are in a terrible spot. It's just, unfortunately, they just are. Some factions don't even have a bigwig, like Votann, that you can really point to and be like, well, that's a guy who should be on this list. And for the guys we didn't include...
a lot.
Yeah, we didn't include guys like Khan or Ahriman or Typhus, but it's because fundamentally, like, kind of like Calgar represents a lot of them in that they're just overshadowed by their Primarch. And Calgar is sort of hit to a degree that I wanted to put him in here as just a good example of that. There's no point of adding a Khan in when Angron exists. They functionally perform the same role. Typhus, same role as Mortarion, right? It used to be that Typhus was the get things done part of Nurgle. Mortarion is now getting things done. So Typhus's role is just to enable some of Mortarion's actions. That's it. Same with Ahriman. He wants to put Thousand Suns back together. It seems he's back in Magnus's good graces and hanging around with Thousand Suns again, so that's not an issue. If Rain, for example, she's not hanging out here with the avatar of Ynnari because it's pointless. There's no point adding all of those characters. So we left a lot of them off. But fundamentally, out of 21 characters shown, 2 are in a fantastic spot, Guilliman and Cawl. You know? But like it or not, what's happened around them...
The execution might not have been to everyone's preferences, but been made use. They've had a use.
Yep. We've got one in okay, good place, and that's Mortarion. Because they haven't had a chance to ruin him. We have like half a dozen in the moderate success. I mean, Angron, Swarmlord, and Ghazghkull are down one end of that extreme where they're on the cusp of failing. And then you got like the Morvenn, Calgar, and Ursula at the other end. And then basically everyone else is just in the outright failed or epic failure sections. So I think that really puts into... I mean, I'll be very interested to see if like there are some hard counters to what we've said that really change our opinions. Because I think we've had a pretty good back and forth throughout this episode, you and I, to try and establish where these people sit. I'm going to be very interested in the comments if there are some real strong opinions expressed that make us want to change our minds dramatically. That's going to be the big one.
I mean, I'm open to having like changed. I'm not like iron, like it must be this way, or if there's something we haven't considered, I think we'd both be amenable to.
Yeah, definitely.
Considering that.
But it has, my only caveat is it has to be good evidence. You can't just say like, you know, wishful thinking, like, oh, well, you know, the Swarmlord is unkillable, therefore he has endless narrative potential. So potential is not a good, you know, measuring bar. Like, you got to come up with something really tangible to, you know, like I said before, you can't just be like, oh, but Abaddon defeated Calgar. Like, how cool is Abaddon? It's like, well, of course he beat Calgar. Calgar is a piece of shit compared to a firstborn 10,000-year-old veteran who's being empowered by all the gods of chaos, wielding a Primarch's weapon and an ancient demon sword. Like, he was better. Shock. Fuck, it's like the Incredible Hulk beating up a schoolgirl. Like, yeah, you probably should. So, you know.
Yeah, in fact, I think it was probably too close, given the actual disparity you would expect. I don't think it. Yeah, Vigilus could have been kind of cool, but
it's not the best tome.
Yeah.
So yeah,
bad payoff. Decent setup, I think.
Yeah. So that's it. Really, that's the tier list in the nutshell. I'll pull all my characters up into frame for everyone to see. It's the parting shot. But yeah, that's nice. It. That's what happened. if you, like I say, if you have very strong opinions, any opinion really, throw it in the comments. We're happy to read through them. You might change our mind and we might find a newfound respect for what they've done with some of these characters. And I'm all for that, because if it improves the story, why wouldn't I want that? I think you feel the same.
Yeah, 100%, right? Like I kind of mentioned it earlier. Like it's so annoying to me when it's like you have this much beloved cast of characters, but it's like, oh, we can't really focus on them and give them any attention for like campaigns, because we just have these new characters we want, or these new sculpts that we want to push for this campaign, right? So there's a bit of like battling incentives in that part. But I'd also, like, on the comment side of things, I'd also encourage people to like suggest characters we didn't include, which would be worth including. Like, I think there are some notable characters.
Archon World Claimer.
I was thinking more like Hell or something. Archon World Claimer. Oh, jeez.
Everyone's favorite, right?
Everyone's
the Beastman to Abaddon Skeletor.
It definitely has that energy.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I want to thank you so much for coming on, joining me for this, Cypher. It's always appreciated.
It's a pleasure.
It
was fun.
I might throw some like sound bites of North in just randomly into the video, just so it was like he was here with us in spirit.
He was here all along.
Or I'll just I'll totally re-edit and recut his words. So, hello, Abaddon. You are quite good at turning me on. And just,
Nice reference.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you everyone who decided to tune in for 2 hours and listen. I hope you got something out of it, and look forward to more Grimdark therapy in the future. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
Leman Russ is the best, he's awesome, the Space Wolves are the best, and you should just collect Space Wolves, and you would do if you weren't such a prat, right?